Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Logan. How are you, Logan?
Evening, Alex. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Another interesting week in football, and I guess whilst it wasn't exactly the most amazing result for us, not taking the 3 points, although there's a case that it's not that important at this point in time. It was a very entertaining game to watch, and it's been a good week.
Yeah, look, another week down. Only the one game to go until the end of the season, so we'll be previewing that a little bit later on. But look, as you say, I mean, not taking the 3 points against Swansea, but a side that was chasing a place in the top six coming into the game. Obviously, they needed to win those final two games. To score after the 3 minutes as we did, Vaughan, another really impressive display, I thought, to set the goal up, whether it's an own goal or a two-fan goal, however you view it. I thought that was a bit of terrific play from him. And look, we didn't look out of place again. And once again, I think, sort of a common theme, we didn't look out of place against one of these sort of better sides in the division, and it can only bode well for next season.
Yeah, well, I want to start by saying it was definitely a two-fan goal. There's no way that I think that could be chalked up as an own goal. When you see the quality of the cross, I mean, the position Vaughan got himself in to thread the ball back. And, yeah, look, I mean, I can see why it gets awarded, but the hard work was done. It wasn't calamitous or anything like that. It was, it was a well-worked, City move and bit of individual brilliance and a very cool finish. So definitely a two-fan goal. And yeah, I agree. I think that's, a very common theme that we've talked about recently. The football quality seems to have stepped up. There's a real brand of City football. And, we certainly look like we are, not just a threat on the attacking side of the field, but look to be defending a lot better. I mean, who was it that we got put away? Was it Burnley? It was quite a convincing loss. Away. Well, it feels like a fair way back now, but it really doesn't feel like this particular City team and the way we're playing at the moment. We're in any real danger of being put away by any side. So, it was a very impressive performance. A little bit disappointing when Swansea did get their equaliser, because I thought we were on top for large portions of the match and really looked to be playing with great confidence. So it was just a little bit disappointing when they were able to get that angled ball in the box and finish across the keeper. It was disappointing, but overall I thought it was another fairly solid City performance.
Yeah, considering it was Swansea who had more to play for in this one, it was a bit surprising that we were seemingly the ones more on top and more likely to score a second goal than them, especially in that second half. I mean, I'm thinking of the fact that Tufan had that shot that rattled the crossbar. Slater had a pretty snatched shot across goal as well. There's that chance that fell to Doherty where, I mean, for Doherty's sake, he's pretty lucky that it was actually flagged offside, because he's missed a pretty much one-on-one with the keeper opportunity, which you think on any other day he's putting that one away. So he's sort of spared a few blushes by the fact that the offside flag goes up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if it was a different point in the season or we were in a different position and it was critical, I think that I would be very quick to point that chance out. But as you said, the flag probably did save him in this particular instance.
That's it. I guess the other big thing, I mean, we sort of touched on him already, but Harry Vaughan's performance again, absolutely outstanding. And he's just coming on in leaps and bounds. And the one almost frustration that I've got is it seems like his teammates aren't trusting him or aren't recognizing his ability as quickly as maybe we'd like to see it. Because I can think of a few cases where, Elder's not either getting the ball out wide to him to let him use the space and width, which he used so well in that 3rd minute assist for Tufan, or you had the chance that fell to Ali where the space opened up on that side for Vaughan to be played in so easily, and Ali's taking the shot on himself. It just feels a little bit like the teammates are sitting there going, he's this kid in the side and he's not someone we can really rely on. But he's showing when he gets the ball, he certainly can be relied on.
Without a doubt. And I did actually think that, particularly with the Ali opportunity. And I don't know if that's maybe an element of Ali as well. And he's kind of looking for, he's that X factor player who probably likes to take, defenders on himself anyway, and does have an air of confidence. But yeah, you're right. Vaughan has just appeared on the scene with such a level of confidence and like seeming momentum. But it's like, this is a player that I guarantee those more senior and established players didn't expect to find, having such a pivotal role towards the back end of the season. So I think there's probably an element of shock, even amongst that playing group, that it's like, oh, hold on a second. Like, oh yeah, Harry Vaughan's up there in that position. When this is someone who's, incredibly young, that they've probably been training with, but just didn't expect, him to flourish the way he has. And so the fact that he's putting himself in those positions and, and contributing, not just in the game of like he's, having a few positive touches, he's now a very likely goal threat and, seemingly very clear opportunist for assists as well. I think it's as much of a shock to them as it is to us. But yeah, you're right. It's going to take time for them to build that trust because of the player that he is. But equally, I thought the post match interview, maybe if it wasn't this game, it was the one before, where he was asked about that. They said, "What does your off season look like?" And because he's such a young, and surprised player, he's kind of like, yeah, I guess I'll just work hard, and I'm loving football. I hope I get back into it. So, it seems very, very grounded, and I'm really excited. I know I've said this the last couple of weeks that I've been on the podcast, and I'm sure that sentiment is shared by many City fans. But I just cannot wait to see the player that he turns out to be. He's showing some incredibly promising signs, and the fact that he's having as much of an influence on games already definitely bodes well for the future.
And something else boding well for the future, another big blockbuster crowd at the MKM, 23 or 20, I think it was 23,000 in attendance. We've seen some awesome crowds the last couple of home games, and really hopefully it kicks on for next season. I think there's been some talk about whether they have the West Upper open on a permanent basis, and if they've got the crowds or the demand for that to be the case, that can only be a positive sign for bigger crowds to come next season. I'm sure that there's a sellout of 25,000, 25,500 sellout crowd just around the corner next season.
Oh, there has to be. And look, I mean, if you follow the City socials, and you saw on Instagram, I think it was probably on Facebook as well, but the lap that Rasinha and Ajun, did with the players, and the City fans, with their Turkish flags, and singing to both the owner and the gaffer. Like, it's just incredible scenes when we consider, what we've witnessed at the KCOM, MKM, or whatever it is these days over the last few years. It's just an incredibly fascinating sight, and it's great to see. I guess it's that age old homage where it's like, if you love us, we'll love you back, and it certainly seems to be that way. And look, you're right, 25,000 seat around the corner. It definitely appears, if the ticket pricing stays the same and the feedback from the fans is listened to, which it appears to be. I don't think there's any reason why we can't expect to see, the West Upper open and it really, packed to the rafters.
No doubt. Look, so my votes for this game for our MVP, which we will announce probably not next week, because the voting is actually very close this year. So it will be in our season review a couple of weeks from now. We'll do our votes for this game and then the Luton game next week. So I gave Vaughan the 3 votes. I thought, following on from his positive displays in previous games, I thought he was an absolute standout in this one again. Obviously, as we've said, setting up that first goal and just looking dangerous, getting into the right positions, making the right runs, and really offering a lot going forward. 2 fan for the 2 votes, for, whether you say he scored the goal, had the chance rattling off the crossbar. Also had a chance, we didn't really talk about it, but he arguably should have been one-on-one with the keeper, but the ref's blown him for what I thought was a pretty soft foul on the defender to pull him up, but could have had a very positive or big opportunity in that case as well. And then I went Greaves for the 1 vote, who I think he's slotted back in at centre-back the last couple of games, and it's as if he's never left.
Yeah, it's interesting that you went that way, because I tried to check myself, because I think I gave Vaughan the 3 votes potentially last week, because I was, or maybe it was only 2 votes, but I was very excited by him, and probably overpraised his performance. So I tried to regulate myself a little bit this time, but I actually went 2-fan for my 3 votes. I thought that he had some really, really key moments, and he's just become the player of influence that we knew he could be. And so for that reason, I gave him 3. I had Vaughan as 2 votes, and it did take every ounce of energy to not give him the 3. And Greaves was my 1 vote. I agree. I thought Greaves was solid again, and only a couple of weeks ago we were talking about whether he leaves the club, whether bids will come in, and it just seems that these last couple of performances at centre back have proven that he still has a role and he's still part of the plans for the future. So, I'm not saying that that's off the table. I still think that if the right bid came in, we'd listen to it. But he definitely does seem to have kind of re-established his position in the squad. So Graves was my one point, and I thought he was solid as well.
Well, speaking of Graves, we'll talk award winners now, because City did have our awards night during the week, where we saw Graves awarded the Young Player of the Year by the club, which was pretty great to see for him. And then we saw Slater clean up with the Supporters Player of the Year and the Players Player of the Year as well. And Alfie Jones taking out the overall Player of the Year as awarded by Rosenia. And Doherty winning goal of the season against Blackpool. I did notice when I saw all the award winners come out, they're all players that we signed or blooded in that League One season. So it does show somewhat, despite all the turnover in the signings last summer, that core of the squad is still very much that League One core, which isn't a negative. It's a positive that we did manage to sign so many, strong characters and strong players in that season who've sort of come up that division with us. And it's, as we've said before, the importance of a promotion squad in having that strong core of personalities and that tight-knit group is really pivotal. I mean, we saw it at City back 2 decades ago when you've got your core of Michael, Ashby, France, and Dawson, of course, coming through from League Two to the Premier League with us, and potentially not to the same effect with these guys coming from League One to the Premier League with us again. But you've got these guys who've stepped up a division and they're still showing their contributions and ability in the Championship for us.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that's, we've seen different methods of how teams have gone about their business with how to get promoted and how to stay in leagues. But yeah, you're right. Those particularly in the lower tiers or the second and third divisions, it really does kind of speak to the need for chemistry as opposed to, star player or star power, I would say. And yeah, that's very much, I mean, in the long term, you kind of look at it and go, was going down to League One a bit of a blessing in disguise, because it has actually, caused us to go and look at a different player market, and certainly look to some, very exciting youth prospects. And as we've started to bring them through, they've almost matured in their playing ability as we've gone back up to the Championship. And, I think that we'll probably talk about this as we set up next season. But if our goal this year was to stay in the division and finish around mid-table, which I think was what most of us kind of shot for, well then, given what we're seeing at the moment, anything short of playoff positions will be a disappointment.
Yeah, no doubt. Were you a little bit surprised at Alfie Jones taking out Player of the Year? I mean, I was surprised only in the sense that I think he's certainly had an underrated season. But I think, for example, Sean McLaughlin next to him in the defence, who's had an outstanding season as well. I think of Slater himself, he's taken out the other 2 Player of the Year awards, or Greaves as well. There's a few other options I think might have, I think, as you mentioned before we went to air, Oscar scoring all the goals early in the season to really sort of set us up for this season. I'm not to say that Jones didn't deserve it at all. I was just, it was a little bit of a left field one for me.
Look, it's been an incredibly patchy season. I think when I kind of reflect, I feel like we've had, so many periods where, as we've talked, on the podcast, there was relegation fears at some stage. There was, obviously the managerial change. We, even players that have come in as kind of late into the season as they can. I mean, Tede has had games where he looks like our best player by a mile, but then, he gets a red card, then he's suspended, then he's injured again. And it's been really clunky. As I said, Ostopinion, his goal scoring record heading into the Christmas break was absurd. I think he was, leading the championship goal scoring race for quite some time before, I think Akpom overtook him. But it's things like that where you just go, oh wow, like it feels like it's been a long season, but there hasn't really been another standout except for maybe Regan Slater, who I think's played well above himself, and we've just really seen the kind of emergence of a player who was maybe underrated, who probably did his job and. It certainly wasn't highly regarded by Sheffield in the way that they let him come to ask for peanuts. But he's really, shown how much of an important part of the squad he is. And I can see why he picked up the supporters playing award. But yeah, Jones was an interesting one. And I agree with you. He hasn't been bad. I just don't think he's been so exceptional that we're all, unanimously going, oh, it's definitely got to be Jones. So interesting one, patchy season. And yeah, I think it is what it is.
And without too much of a spoiler, and I think he's still in with a shout for ours. Last 2 seasons, interestingly enough, our player of the season has lined up with the player of the season as awarded by the club. And I think this year, for the first time, we might actually be going for a different player, which I think is actually to your point, that it's been such a patchy season where at different times, different players have really stood out. And I think, having looked at who's leading ours, I think it's probably a player who's sort of trucked along, played the majority of games, and picked up votes here and there, rather than someone who's had particularly outstanding games. Not to say that this player hasn't, but look, we'll see who that might end up being in a couple of weeks' time. But then we'll finish things off looking ahead to that Luton game. But before that, we'll do a round of Who Am I? I think just about the last, or we'll probably do one more next week before we retire the game for this season. But if you're ready for this edition,
let's do it.
Okay, this one's a little bit of a tricky one, so let's see how we go with this one. Played 78 games for City, and I scored 12 goals.
Oh, it's quite prolific for City ranks. 78 games. We're looking at maybe 1.5 to 2 seasons. 12 goals. Okay. I wonder if this is kind of in the ilk of who our front three. We had Malik Wilkes. He wouldn't have played too many games. Magennis, who was the third? Without knowing the era, this one is tough.
It's funny.
Go.
I was just going to say it's funny because just like you just did there, Dan's the same, where he'll automatically go or super recent and try and think of recent players. So maybe I'll tell you the years that might help narrow it down a bit.
Yep.
So I joined City in 2010. So that's the Nigel Pearson season, and I left in 2013. But I'd had a loan spell with Millwall in the 2011-2012 season while I was at City, which I actually that doesn't help because I had no idea he'd gone to Millwall.
Wow.
So he was still there when we got promoted under Bruce.
Yep.
But he joined under Nigel Pearson.
Cheers. Okay. I feel like this is the. Did this player go on to become rather prolific after us?
No.
Okay.
Who are you thinking?
I was thinking Marty Waghorn, but only because I thought it could have been Marty Waghorn, but maybe even like Josh King. But I don't know if that was the time period. That even though it feels like it wasn't that long ago, you now kind of realize that in 2023 it was a long time ago. And I'm just trying to think who the goal scorers would have been around that time. I know that Robert Corrin would have been a source of goals for us then, but that might have been kind of the start of when he was prolific at City. I mean, like Jay Simpson was there, but I don't know if he scored 12 goals. I remember he was, or was he there under Bruce? Who else was up front with Jay Simpson? There was
The main
Look,
game I remember Jay Simpson for is there was a Bristol City televised game under Bruce where he and Aluko both scored like in the first 15 minutes or something. And it was like they did this like intricate 1-2 pass goal.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. There was Matty Fry. I know we've had Aaron McLean as an answer.
We have,
before, and I don't think he was around that time. This one stumps me. It's Robbie Brady was around for longer than that, and came later in the Bruce team. This is tough.
Do you want to go with one of the players you've mentioned? Because you might
look,
be closer than you think.
Jay Simpson's the closest I can go, but I don't know if 78 games sounds right.
78 games for Jay Simpson is correct. It is Jay Simpson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 78 games, 12 goals. Was with us from 2010 to 2013. So he left. He was one of the players that left when we got promoted to the Premier League. And I think his probably most prolific spell was in Thailand or somewhere, I want to say. I don't think he did a whole lot after us.
Yeah. I do remember under Bruce, he was incredibly prolific for like maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and everyone was like, sign him, and Steve Bruce was like pretty adamant. They've been like, look, we'll wait and see. Like, Brucey has a lot of his old man cliches that are the very traditionalist football sayings, and I remember one of them was like, one hot day doesn't make a long summer, and like we'll see how they're playing when the when the sun comes back out, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just remember him being adamant that it wasn't time to sign Jay Simpson, and in the end, that was a masterstroke. And we saw the fruits of Brucey's scouting. I'm surprised by that. That was a definite blind stab. So I'm glad
that was very
right.
well. I just found it funny that you brought up his name and almost immediately dismissed him, and I was like, oh, don't be so quick. But yeah, look, it was probably that spell that I was thinking of with that Bristol City game where he and Aluko up front seemed to work really well together. And then I think Aluko got injured and Simpsons probably fell off a bit as well. And we went out and got Boyd and Ghetto and stuff like that to sort of step in and fill the void. But look, there you go.
And to your point, I certainly didn't remember him going on loan to Millwall.
I'd completely. That's it. That's it. All right. Well, look, it's the final game of the season against Luton. They're sitting in third. They can't move from third. I think we can probably move up a little bit in the table. I'll have a look while we talk. But it is definitely one of those games that really doesn't have a whole lot on the line. What I would say is it'll be interesting because I think for Luton, they'll probably be rotating the squad a little bit, managing the players ahead of the playoffs, certainly not looking for any injuries, so it won't be a very high-tempo game from them. Look, it looks like, we could fall below Bristol City in 15th, but really we can't catch Watford in 13th. So we're pretty much, if we get something out of this game, we're pretty much going to finish in 13th, I believe. 14th. Look, it's a tricky one from that point of view to get too excited about, but I sort of view it in a similar way to the Swansea game. It's a good chance for us to say, sort of like last season with that game against Forest on the final day. It's a good chance for us to say, this is a team potentially in a couple of weeks will be a Premier League club. Let's go out, see what we can do, and really set ourselves for next season.
100%. And look, it's also on the flip side of that, it's a great opportunity to go out with a free hit and play some players who probably haven't had as many minutes in the last couple of weeks, knowing that really the result is kind of null and void and irrelevant. And I know that they've talked about or Racinius talked about Simons will almost definitely start. So you can kind of expect that change to be made. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us freshen up the squad and just go there and play with a level of confidence, knowing that it doesn't really matter too much. But I do think that we'll keep a good account of ourselves. I don't think that we'll treat it as a throwaway game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some fresh faces when the team sheet comes out.
Yeah, I did say from Dawson's comments that Slater's potentially a doubt. Picked up a knock in training, so might be out for this one. But Oscar's been back in training, and so there's a chance that he could actually be back for this one, which would be pretty interesting. I don't know if I'd need to see Oscar come back in. I don't know if we'd really want to risk him in a game that, as you say, just has nothing attached to it. It looks like Connolly's still missing, so that sort of starts to raise questions about whether we even pursue him permanently if he's really been struggling with a couple of injuries. But as you say, Simon's coming into the team. No doubt that probably Elder and Coyle start again. Sort of starting to hear word that Coyle and who's the other one? Coyle definitely getting a new contract sounds quite likely. Jones, I think, was the other one, definitely going to get a new contract, which potentially suggests from the absence of any comments that maybe Doherty and Elder aren't going to get contracts. So whether they do start as farewell appearances or what we do with that could be a bit interesting. But as you say, yeah, probably just freshen the team up.
I think that's what to expect. And, fair play to Luton. I know that they were kind of there or thereabouts last season. And, I think they might have just missed out on the playoffs, or maybe they did.
I think they might have. Oh, that's a good question. They might have either just missed out, or I think they might have lost in the semi-final. Because they semi-final, because I remember Ingram went there on an emergency loan.
That's right. But yeah, they certainly look like they've timed their run at the back end of the season, and have been playing excellently. It would be one of those teams that I wouldn't be surprised to see go up. But equally, if they don't go up, I also wouldn't be surprised to see them languishing down the back end of the championship next season, similar to I think Barnsley maybe last season or the season before.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing on that I'd say is Luton just strike me as such a well-run club that I think even if they don't get promoted this season, I think they could certainly drop off because they have one of the smaller squads and smaller budgets, and there's a lot of big, you look at the teams potentially coming down from the Premier League, and maybe an Everton, maybe a Leeds, maybe a Leicester. There'll be some big budgets flying around the championship next season, which could make it quite difficult for them. But I couldn't see them going all the way down like a Barnsley or a Huddersfield and being in trouble of relegation. But yes, certainly mid-table is potentially on the cards if they can't get it together and get up this season.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point that you say as well. When you look at the Premier League now, the clubs that inevitably will be coming down to the championship next season are looking like very big clubs. And so I think the championship may be leveling up next season, which makes the challenge even more interesting as we already start to assume we'll be in the playoff picture.
Yeah, that's it. So look, maybe round things off with a score prediction for this one, or how you see our chances for this one, and then we can start to look ahead to next season.
This is an absolute blind throw at the dartboard. I think it's going to be a pretty open game. I don't think because there's too much riding on. I don't think I could see it being high scoring. I reckon it's probably going to be 3-2 or 3-3 or something like that. But look, let's be confident. Let's go to Luton. Let's say we win 3-2 on the final day.
That's it. I'm happy to back that as well. Have a few goals and a bit of entertainment. I'm sure the travelling supporters will get dressed up and enjoy themselves. So hopefully it's a nice, entertaining affair for them. But look, thank you for joining me for this one, Logan.
Yeah, my pleasure, Alex. Good to be here.
And thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, we'll be back next week to review that Luton game. And then we'll probably have our end of season review probably coming out around the same time as the playoff final. So we can sort of end the championship season at the same time and look ahead to next season before we take a well-earned break over the winter months for us, the summer months over in the UK. But until next time, come on, City.